Welcome, everybody, to the Week 3 iteration of Nerding Out with Nic Bodiford. My name is Nic Bodiford. I am joined today by a very special guest who you've always wanted to have live in your neighborhood, Pete, Mr. Rogers. Pete, how are you?
I'm good, Nick. How are you?
Good. So what we're going to do today is we're still going to do the game-by-game rundown, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. First, we're going to kick things off talking 5 guys that we want to talk about. And that could be a sleeper. It could be somebody you're low on. It could be someone that you just want to talk about. So, Pete, can you kick things off with somebody that you want to talk about?
Let me tell you, dear Nicholas, about the man who I'm most excited for this week. And of course, I've been promoting him. We've been promoting him. You and I really have been leading the charge here on the Kyle Pitts bandwagon. And this is the week that I think everything finally clicks and coalesces, and the man who he told you to draft in like the 4th round of your fantasy drafts is a top 4 tight end is going to finally come to fruition this week. The Giants are giving up the 2nd most targets, 2nd most receptions, 5th most yards, and the 2nd most touchdowns to tight ends. And it's not the fact that Kyle Pitts has been ignored in this Falcons offense. He's 2nd in targets. He's 2nd in yards. Like, he is their number 2 wide receiver, and he's going up against the defense. 62 yards to Noah Fant in week 1, the Giants gave up. 66 yards and a touchdown they gave up to the combined Logan Thomas and Ricky Seals-Jones in week 2. I'm thinking Kyle Pitts this week, 80 yards, touchdown. You lock it in. You put him as your starting tight end, and he finishes a top 5 option this week. No problem.
Yep. I love it. It sounds great. Now is the buy low time for him. If anybody out there is like in need of a tight end, which is probably most of fantasy, this is it. And the window is going to close. My first guy is, it's not a sleeper. It's not underutilized. It's Nick Chubb. And the thing that stands out to me about him was going through his receiving game usage. So last year, Kareem Hunt ran 279 routes to Nick Chubb's 191. This year, Chubb has actually run more routes than Kareem Hunt. Hunt is still getting the like pure passing game work where he's in on 3rd down and, 2-minute drill, that kind of stuff. But Chubb is at 27 routes run. Kareem Hunt, is per PFF, is at just 24. I mean, it's not a big discrepancy, but it is really noteworthy that like they're even close, much less that Nick Chubb is in the lead. Their target total right now is just 4 for Hunt, 3 for Chubb. But if we can get some kind of receiving floor from Chubb, we're approaching an area where we really weren't drafting Chubb. Like he was being drafted as basically this elite rush only, like not poor man's Derrick Henry, but like this rush only dude who was just so efficient and in such a great offense that he was still going to finish as a running back 1. If we can get like 50 targets, maybe, 40 from him this year, that would be huge. Like he has kind of access to an elite RB1 season if this usage holds. So for me, Nick Chubb, just keep an eye on him. And if he dips but keeps the usage after like 1 week, maybe look at him for a trade.
Yeah, especially this week with, I know Odell's coming back, but no Jarvis Landry. The Baker Mayfield, he targets either his tight ends or his running backs. And if Chubb is running more routes, that's a good sign for Chubb managers. Speaking of guys who run routes out of the backfield, that's one of the reasons why I'm really high on Melvin Gordon this week. I like both Denver Broncos backfields, or running backs, Javonte Williams as well, just because the Jets are terrible against the run. They've been giving up the 5th most points to running backs to start this year. And so I think both of these guys who get a lot of work and an even pretty split that they'll be able to eat. But I think Gordon gets the edge because of the pass work. He ran 3 times the routes that Javonte Williams did in week 2. And he is, the targets don't show it, but Melvin Gordon is the pass catching back there. And the Jets have allowed the 3rd most catches and 4th most receiving yards to backs to start this year. So I think this could be a really good Melvin Gordon game as the backfield slowly makes it shift to Javonte Williams. There's still some running backs or some games out there for Melvin Gordon to thrive in.
I love it. So I'm going to take the mic here and I'm going to hop to my next 2 guys because they're on the same team. Teddy Bridgewater. This is going to be a really fun matchup, both for Bridgewater and for Cortland Sutton. It seems as though having competition for the starting quarterback job with Teddy and Drew Lock kind of brought out a different version of Teddy, somebody that we haven't really seen.
Teddy Bridgewater throwing it down the field.
Right. Yeah. So his his completion percentage above expectation is 11.5 right now, which is second highest in the NFL. His 15.7 aggressiveness rating it's like mid-tier, but it's the highest that it's been in the last 3 seasons. He's just hucking it deep. And it was promising to see this happen even after Jerry Jeudy was lost for 6 weeks or so after the week 1 game. Cortland Sutton, I think, had the highest single game air yards total of the week last week with like 254. So I really like this connection against the Jets this week. Jets are last in the NFL in both passes defended and interceptions. They've got 3 passes defended to their name and 0 interceptions. So like, I don't know that game script is going to be here for like a crazy outing, but I think that Bridgewater can get into the back end quarterback 1 ranks. And I think Sutton, like, I'm putting his floor as a top 15 wide receiver play, but I think he can finish as a wide receiver 1.
Yeah. Sutton's ADOT currently is 20 yards. It's insane. That's ridiculous.
That's awesome.
Talking of guys who get down the field, I am big on Jamar Chase this week. I think as we look at clearly Kyle Pitts, this is his rookie breakout game. I think the same is true. We've seen a big game from Jamar Chase before, but this is another really good matchup for him. He is the Bengals deep play receiver. He leads them in yards. He has the highest ADOT on the team by a wide margin. I think it's like 18 or so, or 18 and a half yards. So they are looking to target him down the field. And the Steelers have given up the 5th most yards to wide receivers. And we all know what happened last week against Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs absolutely roasted them down the field. Now, Ruggs has that there's like 4 other players in the NFL who have Ruggs's game speed. But given that Joe Burrow looks for Chase down the field and that the Steelers defense has shown that they're susceptible to letting the deep play go, I think this could be a really good. Jamar Chase has like maybe 1 or 2 40+ yard touchdowns in him this game. I think I'm pretty confident in that result.
I like that a lot. The standout guy on the Steelers defense thus far is excuse me. No, I'm getting this twisted. Everyone, save that for the rundown. But shout out to Mike Hilton, switch from the Steelers to the Bengals this offseason, and he's been a lot of fun to watch. So I think that this is a buy low moment for AJ Brown. In week 1, the team only called 2 play action passes, which was like the big fear with Todd Downing. That's kind of what got him run out of Oakland when he was the offensive coordinator in 2017. He only utilized play action on something like 14% of his passes. And the Titans were over like 30% last year, like crazy high play action rate. So week 1 only threw it twice in play action, but in week 2, they got that up to 11 play action pass attempts. And I think Tannehill, his passing total was like 37 or so, or that's what he's averaging right now. So we're kind of they utilized play action on 27% of Ryan Tannehill's pass attempts last week. 36% was the rate they used in 2020. We're getting closer back to that like PA usage that we want to see. And that's kind of what makes this offense hum. I'm optimistic that after the success they saw against Seattle in week 2, that they're going to continue to tell Todd that he needs to, stop doing what he wants to do, which is this drop back passing, and keep throwing play action. So AJ Brown, he still was the team leader in targets last week, despite Julio Jones's breakout. I think this is the time. Like I've got people asking me, what should I do with AJ Brown? And like, keep him in as a wide receiver 1. He's going to rock the house this week. So buy low on AJ Brown. If he happens to be available in your league, I think that he's going to bounce back.
His stat line also, like, I feel like people wouldn't be fretting so much about him if he had caught, like, he had one awful drop against the Seahawks where he was just wide open and it bounced off his hands. Like if he catches that, I think it's like, suddenly his stat line looks a lot better. And we're like, oh, this is the AJ Brown is starting to build. Like he's looking more in like what you saw last year. And the Colts are of course a defense that you can, that he can be able to put numbers on. So I totally agree with you. Quarterback wise, somehow Daniel Jones is a top 5 fantasy quarterback to start this year. And the thing that I love about it, that's been the most surprising to me, is how effective his rushing floor has been this year. He's averaging 11.1 non-passing points per game, which is second only to Lamar. And like that right there is a baseline that's like awesome. And then you add any kind of passing on top of that. And that's why he's in this top 5, quarterback category. And beautiful matchup against the Falcons, who have given up the most points to quarterbacks to start this year. So already a super high floor with this rushing. And then you're playing against a defense that hasn't been able to stop quarterbacks all year long. Granted, we're 2 weeks into the season, but Daniel Jones feels like another lock to be a top 5, finisher this week in fantasy.
Yeah. I, in my largest pot home league, benched Trevor Lawrence for him. So yeah, firing up. I'm riding with Danny Dimes this week. My last guy that I want to talk about, I did kind of want to do at least one sort of sleeper, wide receiver Rashard Higgins of the Cleveland Browns after Jarvis Landry. So Higgins was like only a bench player in week 1. And then after Landry went out in week 2, Donovan Peoples-Jones still cycled in as a slot receiver, but Higgins took the team high 10 snaps out of the slot. So I think that he's going to step in as like the full-time slot guy. Baker Mayfield likes to throw short. He appreciates a safety blanket. I don't know that Higgins is going to be like startable across all formats, but I think that in a full point PPR format, if you're looking for some kind of like second flex wide receiver 3/4 borderline guy, I think that Higgins is your man.
Yeah. I have another guy for that category too. And that's Darnell Mooney, who I was talking up throughout this offseason with the assumption that Justin Fields would take over as starting quarterback for the Bears at some point. And that's what we're getting this week. He's seen at least 7 targets per game to start this year. So he has been heavily involved with Andy Dalton. And now he gets the upgrade of Justin Fields, who throws such a beautiful touchdown ball that Allen Robinson is not used to it and doesn't know how to catch it. So the work is going to be like, when Mooney gets open, which he's proven time and time again, he can down the field, the ball is going to get to him for the first time in his career. And the Browns pass defense is ranked 26th in the NFL per NEF rating. So like, this is a defense that the Bears can exploit in the secondary. And I think this game is just going to ultimately be building off of Rashard Higgins. Like, I think this is going to be a pass happy, like a really big high scoring game, given the fact that both of these defense quite haven't lived up to the talent that's on them, the Bears and the Browns. And so I could see this game getting kind of, like we're pushing mid 30s on each side, and you want to have any piece of that you can get.
Yeah. I think we've all been looking forward to Darnell Mooney's breakout. And as you said, Fields throws a really nice deep ball, and his style of play, I hope for Allen Robinson's sake, he kind of dials it back, because it seems as though he basically is looking downfield, and if he doesn't see it, then he scrambles. But to your point, Mooney, he's seen 4 targets from Justin Fields, which is tied with Robinson and Goodwin for team lead. So like, he's clearly looking downfield more than he is anywhere else. I like this pick. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Pete. Hope everybody appreciated this. We are on to the full game slate. So kicking things off with the first game of the Sunday 10 a.m. PST slate, Indianapolis Colts at Tennessee Titans. Looks like Carson Wentz might actually play. He's managed to sprain both ankles last week. One's a low ankle sprain, one is high. If he doesn't, it's going to be Jacob Eason and Brett Hunt, and maybe both like Eason and Brett Hundley playing. That would be terrible, and we would only look at Michael Pittman. But it does look like Carson Wentz is going to play against the Titans. I think he can finish between mid to high quarterback 2. I'm not going with him in single QB leagues, but in 2 QB or super flex. Yeah, totally. Pittman didn't see enough work in week 1, and the team quickly rectified that. They shot him 12 targets in week 2 against Seattle, and he responded with 123 receiving yards. I think that he can be trusted as a wide receiver / flex again this week if Wentz is in. Zach Paschall, he's converting his red zone looks. His end zone looks. He's 3 of 3. But he's just not getting a lot of volume. So I'm not looking Paschall's way unless it's a really, really deep multi-flex league, and only if Carson Wentz is active. Paris Campbell, Michael Strahan, not interested in either one of these guys. Weird stuff going on in the tight end room. Jack Doyle is pulling ahead in the snap department and the target department, 95-66 on the snaps against Mo Alley Cox, 12-4 in the target department. This is a bummer because Mo Alley Cox is better than he is, but if the team is going to continue to skew workloads towards Doyle, if you're in a 2 tight end format, tight end premium, so 1.5 PPR points for tight ends, like you could look at him in a 2 tight end format. I'm probably not going to start him this week. It's a little bit of a wait and see right now. As far as the running backs go, if Carson Wentz is in, then I would be very excited about Nyheim Hines as an outlet pass guy, because Wentz is going to be very immobile with the ankle injuries. He's going to just be dishing it off to Hines. Hines could see 10 targets, no problem. Maybe not no problem, but like it's within his potential range of outcomes pretty firmly. So I would be excited about Hines. If it's one of the other two guys, I'm not starting him. Jacob Eason is an inaccurate downfield thrower, and Brett Hundley is a bad quarterback who likes to scramble. Neither one of those guys' playing styles are conducive to Nyheim Hines. Marlon Mack got too much work last week, and he didn't do very well, so I don't think that they're going to play him too much. Jonathan Taylor, I know Jonathan Taylor rosterers are probably a little bit nervous about his performance thus far, but when you cut through the BS, so to speak, there's actually some pretty cool nuggets in here. So Taylor is number 1 in the NFL in both red zone carries and carries inside the 10-yard line. Touchdowns are going to come. This is what we call positive regression towards the mean. He's going to start scoring some touchdowns, and he's going to be like a high-flying running back one. If you have Taylor, be excited. And if you don't, consider trading for him. Maybe, a running back two as the offer. On the Tennessee Titans side of the ball, we got a really promising increase in play action. We talked about this in the intro section. 2 PA attempts in week 1, 11 in week 2. That's 27% of the passing attempts in week 2. We need to get that back up to 36%, but it's a good start. Indy's defense is talented, they try hard. There are some good players in there. It's not necessarily overloaded with superstars, but Ryan Tannehill stays like a top 15 option in this one, especially with the resurgence of the play action passing, which thank you, Mike Vrabel. I'm sure that he got in Todd Downing's ear about that one. The reason that we like play action passing is because it works really well. On Ian Harditz's PFF Fantasy Football podcast, he and Dwayne McFarland talked about the value of a play action pass attempt for a receiver as opposed to a typical drop back. It adds around 15 to 20% point increase per attempt. So that's massive. Anybody who's concerned about AJ Brown, don't be. He's still a wide receiver one. He was the leader, the team leader in targets last week. I think he had 9, and I think he's tied for second in the NFL in air yards with like 173. That was floating around the Twitter sphere. So AJ Brown is still a locked in wide receiver 1 for me. If you don't have him, I would consider offering a wide receiver 2 in exchange for him. Make it respectful, but try to take advantage of someone's nervousness. Julio Jones, 2.2 yards per route run, right where it should be. He's balling. He's he's probably like back end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 this week. I would be very surprised if he finishes outside of the top 24 at the position. Sorry, I got stuck with a Oh, sorry guys, got hit with a mute notification, but no, we're good. Third wide receiver on the Titans is either Chester Rogers or Josh Reynolds. Here's the deal. Josh Reynolds missed a couple weeks. Chester Rogers filled in, didn't do very well. Reynolds is coming back. He's going to be the number 3. I'm not looking at him outside of very deep leagues. Michael Pruitt and Jeff Swain, the tight ends, not starting either one of those two guys. I'm not rostering either one of those two guys. Derrick Henry, we know he's going to get over 20 carries a week. We're excited about that. That's why we drafted him as a high-end running back 1. Something very cool is going on with his receiving usage, though. He's never seen more than 31 targets in a single season. I think this is his 6th NFL season. Through 2 games, he already has 10 balls thrown his way. He's caught 9 of them for 74 yards. He's playing well with those looks. If that momentum stays, I think the extrapolation was around 85 targets on the year. With Christian McCaffrey out due to a hamstring injury, Derrick Henry is, again, if this receiving usage holds, he's the best bet to finish as fantasy's running back 1 this year. It'd be nice to see another 5 targets come his way this week. We'll see. But if it's tough to trade for him off of such a booming performance like he had in week 2. But, if the usage is there, but the box score is like RB12, maybe consider floating an offer to whoever has him rostered. Henry's going to smash this year if this usage stays. Jeremy McNichols, he's just the primary number 2 back there. Darrington Evans on injured reserve, and I'm not interested in rostering McNichols. You could put it, I mean, I guess in light of, Chuba Hubbard and potentially Alexander Mattison, what they might do this week. Okay. I could see it. He's not as good as those guys are, and may not get as large of a workload, but yeah, I mean, McNichols, especially if you don't have Derrick Henry, go get McNichols. Cause think about it. If you have Christian McCaffrey and you have Chuba Hubbard, now you drop down to like a running back too. You still have that usage hole filled, but imagine if you didn't draft McCaffrey and you have Chuba Hubbard on your bench. Now you've got a top 24 at worst, probably top 15 running back on your team, plus whoever else you had. Atlanta Falcons at New York Giants. So this one should be a nice bounce back spot for Atlanta. They've played Philadelphia and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, two really good defenses, and they've looked like they've played really good defenses. The New York Giants, really bad. They've allowed 575 passing yards, 8th most in the league, 4 passing touchdowns, tied for 12th, and just 1 interception. Overall, we can go further into the details there, but their pass defense is really just not that great. Our own Patty Cooper and his pass defense NEFF rating has them as the league's 22nd best pass defense unit. I think that's right on. Matt Ryan, mid-tier quarterback 2 this week. Calvin Ridley. So here's the thing. He's going to have to duke it out with James Bradberry. Terry McLaurin, he ran roughshod over the Giants last week. Bradberry doesn't always travel into the slot where Terry McLaurin will go. He's an inside-outside X receiver. Ridley mostly stays on the perimeter. So, maybe don't expect like a Terry McLaurin performance from Ridley this week, because James Bradberry is a really good cornerback, but like I'm still going to have Ridley as a back end to mid-tier wide receiver 1. Like I think I have my expectation for him capped at like wide receiver 7. And I'm pretty pumped about having potentially the wide receiver 7 on a given week in my starting lineup. Russell Gage is injured, and he also wasn't getting very much work because he's not very good. So I know some folks took a gamble on him. I would feel free to cut him right now. So Kyle Pitts, he's the guy that I really want to talk about here. And it's not we don't have to go too into the weeds on it, I suppose, but basically he is getting fantastic usage. Like he continues to get a good volume of targets, a good volume of snaps. If you were in need of a tight end, I think that you can still go get an elite one in Kyle Pitts. The schedule opens up. Starting with Philadelphia and Tampa Bay as your first 2 games as a rookie, that's rough. But like New York Giants, I think we could see a pretty big smash performance here. Of course, the hottest name of this group. Oh, and Olamide Zaccheaus. No, don't roster him. Cordero Patterson. So depending on your league, like home league, Patterson might have wide receiver and running back eligibility. It's also a flex eligible. But the dude Cordero Patterson is a very capable rusher and receiver, and he's just getting a lot of work right now. I don't think that there are necessarily enough looks to go around in this offense once Kyle Pitts hits his stride and Mike Davis hits his stride. But for right now, it appears as though you've got a guy that like is just going to be involved in both facets of the game. So I would consider utilizing Cordero Patterson as a wide receiver 3/flex this week. It's a really good matchup. Mike Davis, I've got him ranked at his floor, which is running back 28. And part of that's because of Cordero Patterson. Part of it's because the offensive line in Atlanta is really awful, but New York is allowing 5 yards per carry to opposing backfields. That's 4th most in the NFL. For comparison, Philadelphia was offering 3.8 yards per carry to opposing running backs, and Tampa Bay was at 3.0. So we're talking about, at minimum over a yard better per carry that Mike Davis might have access to here. Go ahead and flex him. You could start him as a running back too, though, and I don't think you'll be upset. New York Giants side of things, Daniel Jones, dude is balling both as a passer and probably more importantly, as a rusher. He's averaging 61 yards per game on the ground, 3rd most at the position. And the Atlanta Falcons have allowed the league high 8 passing touchdowns through 2 weeks without registering a single interception. So I benched Trevor Lawrence in a single QB league this week for Daniel Jones, and I'm doing so confidently. One thing to keep an eye on, I don't think will be a factor here because of how bad the Atlanta Falcons defense is. The Giants are down a starting guard. Shane Lemieux went on injured reserve, and then Nick Gates broke his leg. Might be career ending. Huge bummer. But what that means is that they're going to be playing with a number 3 guard in the starting lineup. So again, against Atlanta's defense, I'm not concerned, but against a better defense, this might be a problem. Sterling Shepard. So it's tough to say what's going or how this is going to play out with Sterling Shepard. The dude's been balling with Evan Ingram out, and that's because they both basically play slot receiver. Though to be fair, Sterling Shepard has been operating on the perimeter as well. He's got a team high 19 targets this week, through 2 games. Kenny Golladay, battling a hip injury, is going to play. Evan Ingram is going to return to the lineup this week too. So I don't think that Daniel Jones is going to entirely go away from Sterling Shepard, but I would have started him as a confident wide receiver too if either Kenny Golladay or Evan Ingram were not going to play this week, but it looks like they both are. So I think we have to drop Sterling Shepard down to a flex play, wide receiver 3/flex play. But I wouldn't just leave him, on your bench just because you see these guys coming back in. Daniel Jones is not really equipped to mesh with Kenny Galladay's jump ball clasher style. He needs to see a guy open to throw it. Darius Slayton, Kadarius Toney. Atlanta has allowed, as I put in the piece in the rundown this week, a whopping 7 completions of 20 yards or more. I like Darius Slayton to grab at least 1, maybe 2 of those, and maybe he can take one to the house. I'm not starting him outside of multi-flex leagues, but in DFS, I absolutely would roll the dice on Darius Slayton. Kadarius Toney, he's just a freaky athlete. He's not very good, but with the way that Atlanta is allowing deep completions, you could in DFS go with him. I'm not advising it. I would go with Slayton. Evan Ingram, pretty excited about this one. The Falcons are allowing 19.2 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends, second most in the NFL. Start him as a tight end 1. Kyle Rudolph, you could get him in there in DFS. Do not start him in redraft, but just because of how bad the Falcons tight end coverage is, you could roll with Rudolph in a weird contrarian DFS lineup. Saquon Barkley was not on the injury report this week. This was the week that you drafted him for. He was always going to be eased in. And hey, he broke a 40-yarder last week, and people want to say, well, if you take that away, then but he's showing good lateral agility. And guess what? He did break that 40-yard gain because he's Saquon Barkley. So I personally would be very excited about the New York Giants lead running back. He is boldly my running back 5 overall on the week. Devontae Booker is the primary backup who would see time if Barkley were to go down or miss time, suspension, what have you. But he's not very good. Los Angeles Chargers at Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that there's a little bit of positive regression coming for Justin Herbert. So he's averaging 4.4 more pass attempts per game and basically a half a rushing attempt more per game that he was last year when he finished as the quarterback 9. He's had some trouble with the end zone, but what we know is that touchdowns follow yardage, not the other way around. When you produce a lot of yardage, you end up scoring a lot. That is how things work. It is the world goes round, and when you score a lot, when you rack up yardage, points follow. There is a correlation causation thing at play here. So I am rolling with Justin Herbert against the Kansas City Chiefs as an elite quarterback 1. The offensive pace of play here and the game script are going to be a lot of fun. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, both of these guys are wide receiver 1s this week. Keenan Allen, model of consistency, posted 100 yards in back-to-back weeks. Williams, so there's this narrative that Joe Lombardi said that Williams is going to play the Michael Thomas inside-outside X role. He's not doing that, and he never said that. Daniel Popper put that in there as his own analysis, but did not clearly attribute that to Joe Lombardi. That said, Mike Williams is seeing different usage. He's no longer getting these monster ADOTs, average depths of target, on a weekly basis. His is at 9.3, which is in the neighborhood of the typical X receiver. He is, however, seeing fewer slot snaps than he was, I believe, last year. And I think, both in 2019 and 2020. His 2021 slot rate is lower than 2019 and 2020. He's just balling out as an X receiver on the perimeter. So yeah, both of them are top 12 plays this week. Jalen Guyton has outstepped Josh Palmer 103-32. It is not yet Josh Palmer's time to take over as the deep threat. That is Jalen Guyton. He can be used in DFS. Jared Cook, he's still the tight end one here. But here's the thing. Donald Parham had a 36-yard touchdown called back last week. If that happened, Parham would be on waiver wire lists. So the Chiefs are allowing 12.6 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. That's 11th most in the league. Not special, but significant. I think that Cook is like a mid to low tight end one option. But the guy that I am interested in benching, in rostering and putting on my bench is Donald Parham. The dude is just too good. Side note. Okay. It is fair to point out that the Chiefs played week 1 without Tyrann Mathieu, and that might've contributed to some tight end production. But again, I'm not advising you start either of these guys really this week. Just stash Parham. Okay. Austin Eckler. This is Austin Eckler week. I've got him, I believe, as a top 5 play. This is from PFF Gerard, the Kansas City Chiefs run defense this season. 5.9 yards per carry, most in the NFL. 396 yards, most in the NFL. 71 more than anyone else. 7 touchdowns, 4 more than anybody else. 7 rushing touchdowns, 4 more than anybody else. Austin Eckler is going to take this one to the moon. He's an elite running back one this week. Okay, Justin Jackson, Larry Roundtree, they're basically alternating as the number 2 back here, and they're sort of hampering the other one from breaking out. What I put in the column here, pick your poison for a bench stash. My guy is Justin Jackson. Larry Roundtree, his athleticism is literally on par with offensive linemen. I don't want him on my roster. Kansas City Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes, he's a top 3 quarterback on a weekly basis. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. So this kind of cracked me up. I was looking at their average intended air yards. Travis Kelce, his average intended air yards. So if the ball travels. Excuse me. Yeah, no. This is we're not touching on that. We're touching on the share of teams' air yards. So Kelce, just 14.11% of the team's overall air yard share. Of course, he is a top 2 tight end, and he's got 13 of 15 targets for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, meanwhile, owns 43.91% of the team's air yards, has caught 14 of 19 targets for 211 yards and 1 touchdown. The way in which these two guys interact, where one is just downfield destroying the league and the other one is working in the short to intermediate area, still destroying the league, is wonderful. Again, Kelce, top 2 tight end. Tyreek Hill, top 5 wide receiver. I broke down all of the snaps between Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, and Byron Pringle in the piece. You all can take a look at that for yourselves. The fact of the matter is, this trio sits between wide receiver 65 and wide receiver 73 in half-point PPR scoring. Pick one for DFS, roll with it. Don't start any of them in redraft leagues. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I put some stuff in the piece. I linked to Jay Moyer, excellent film guy, kind of breaking down CEH's usage this year. And it's not what he should be getting. This one's tough because the Chargers, so per Patty Cooper, the Chargers run defense is the 31st ranked unit. I think it's the only one that it's better than is their opponent or themselves, the Chiefs this week. So I understand if you want to start CEH, like you should start CEH. I have him ranked, I think, as the running back 21 this week. Just understand his usage is not great. He's not getting a lot of passing game work. He's not a running back 1. He's not the running back 1 that you drafted him as. He is only a running back 2. Darrell Williams is not getting enough work to be, he's a bench stash. That's it. In case CEH misses time. Cincinnati Bengals at Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have had some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Tyson Alualu, probably their best defensive tackle. He's on injured reserve. Joe Hayden, Devin Bush are both nursing groin injuries, and TJ Watt also has a groin injury. Those guys are probably going to play, but they're not 100%. So what does it mean for Joe Burrow? Well, I think that they're still going to be able to move the chains, maybe more so than the public is thinking. I like Joe Burrow as a somewhere around the quarterback 12 spot. If he was quarterback 14, I wouldn't, be surprised. If he was quarterback 10, also wouldn't be surprised, but he's not fully healthy yet. And it is a well-coached defense. So it's not an easy matchup by any means, but it's not as bad as it looks on paper. As far as the wide receivers go, T. Higgins is doubtful with a shoulder injury. I like Jamar Chase to just be locked in as a wide receiver 2, mid-tier wide receiver 2 at worst. I think he can finish top 15. Tyler Boyd, he definitely jumps up as a, potential scorer. I think he's like a very high floor flex, wide receiver 3 who can have a good ceiling as well. Pittsburgh lost Mike Hilton to the Bengals, who we'll talk about in a minute, slot cornerback this offseason. And I think that Tyler Boyd can take advantage of that. TJ Uzoma, only in DFS. Steelers are not great against tight ends, but only in DFS. Joe Mixon, I think he's going to beat the hell out of the interior of the Steelers defensive line. As mentioned just a second ago, Tyson Alualu out. I think that Mixon is just going to shoot through that gap. His 54 touches are tied for 3rd in the NFL. His 221 yards from scrimmage are 8th. His 100 snaps are tied for 7th. We like what we see with Joe Mixon. He's the full-on bell cow back. Chris Evans would get the passing game work, where Mixon missed time. Samaje Perine, the run game work. Neither of these guys are viable in fantasy while Mixon is in there. He is right now. And I think I've got Mixon, as a mid-tier running back 1. Pittsburgh Steelers side of things. So Ben Roethlisberger is dealing with a pectoral injury, which is really rough because it's on his throwing side, and the pec is very much involved in throwing the football. I included a little GIF from Dr. Edwin Porras in the piece. Go check it out. I think he's just like a mid to low quarterback 2 this week. I'm not optimistic. He's, of course, not aided by the fact that Deontay Johnson is out with a knee injury. And Mike Hilton, as mentioned above, is like destroying offensive lines. The Bengals have been using him slot cornerback as a blitzer, and he has registered either a quarterback hurry or a quarterback pressure on each of his 6 blitzes. Dude is crushing it this year. The Bengals also signed defensive end Trey Hendrickson away from the New Orleans Saints. He's racked up 4 hurries, 4 pressures, 1.5 sacks. Like the Bengals defense is not deep, but it is very talented at the top, and they are going to make life really difficult on the Steelers, who may have the worst offensive line in the NFL. Okay, now that said, Chase Claypool is going to step in as the X receiver with Deontay Johnson out. We like that a lot. That could be 10 targets of, a reasonable average depth of target, like 9.3 or so, as Mike Williams is seeing. So Chase Claypool is wide receiver 2 this week. Juju Smith-Schuster, Juju has to go do battle with Mike Hilton. I'm rendering him a wide receiver 4. His 3.8 average targeted air yards are 7th lowest in the league. I am just entirely out on Juju Smith-Schuster right now. James Washington is going to assume Chase Claypool's role as the downfield Z receiver. You can use him in DFS only. Pat Freiermuth, Eric Ebron, tight ends. It's a 2 tight end committee. Don't start either of them. Here's the deal with the Cincinnati Bengals front 7. They are getting ripped up by opposing running backs through the passing game. They're allowing 9 receptions to opposing backs. That's 3rd most in the NFL. And 43.5 receiving yards, 12th most. The problem is the Steelers have not really committed to Harris. So Harris is getting like 100% of the snaps, but he's only averaging 4 targets per game. They need to crank that up. I echo the great Warren Sharp in saying that no coach has done less with more than Mike Tomlin. It's a very talented team, and they've had a really good record for a long time, but he needs to show better game planning. You can blame Matt Canada, whatever. But they need to throw the ball to Najee Harris. I've got Najee Harris as a mid-tier running back 2. If they don't throw him the football 8 times this week, then we have to just kind of cement our expectation for Najee as a mid to low running back 2. He's not going to be able to get the groundwork numbers that we need for him to return RB1 value behind this offensive line. Benny Snell Jr. is the primary backup, while Anthony McFarland Jr. is on injured reserve. Chicago Bears at Cleveland Browns. I broke this down in a video earlier this week, but here's the deal with Justin Fields and his how he's playing quarterback, how he has been playing the quarterback position, either when they've subbed Andy Dalton out or during Andy Dalton's bone bruise in his knee caused absence. So Fields is the starter. He's shown Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and Marquise Goodwin 4 targets apiece. I believe Cole Kmet got either 1 or 2. Each running back, David Montgomery got and Damian Williams got 1. The Bears last week, it was a close game. While Justin Fields played throughout the entirety of the second half, the Chicago Bears carried the football. They handed off the ball on first and second down 82% of the time. Average is like 47. So I don't think that they're going to stick to that tilted of a game script. You know, they didn't get Fields the first team reps that they should have been giving him. But I think that they're still going to go super run heavy here. So I am still all in on David Montgomery as like, I think I've got him here. I'll check the rankings as I'm spitting, but okay. Yeah. I've got him as a running back 14. He's not going to see much passing game work, but the guy could see like 25 carries. We like that. Damian Williams, though, is rendered completely ineffective. His bonus, the thing he was getting was passing game usage. And so with Fields at the helm, he's not a factor. Unfortunately, Allen Robinson has to be dropped to a wide receiver 2. What Fields is doing is he's looking downfield. So Marquise Goodwin and Darnell Mooney are both downfield speedsters. The fact that they are, equal in targets with Allen Robinson, which they probably won't scheme this week, but the fact that they are when Fields has been on the field tells us a lot about how he's playing the game. He wants to look downfield. So we're dropping Allen Robinson from a top 12 wide receiver to a top 24 wide receiver, maybe in the wide receiver 20 to 22 neighborhood. He's phenomenal. He can totally get it done. But with what we've seen from Fields, I think it would be good to reduce expectations a bit. Fields, I've got as a quarterback 1. I know I'm all over the map on how I'm breaking down the positions here, but you get it. Fields is a quarterback 1. When he is looking downfield, if he doesn't see a receiver open, he takes off. He's had 4 scrambles. He's totaled 29 yards on them. That's over 7 yards a carry. Very realistic to think Fields can rush for 100 yards and a touchdown this week. Anything he does with his arm is just the cherry on top. He's a quarterback 1. I would, if I were putting money on it, I would put him as a quarterback 11. He could totally finish as like the quarterback 6 though. Don't be afraid to start him here. Mooney and Goodwin. I know Pete's really into Mooney. For me, the presence of Marquise Goodwin is too much to rely on Darnell Mooney in like a redraft format, but in a multi-flex league, I could see it. DFS, you can fire up either of these guys. Marquise Goodwin will certainly be low rostered, and Cole Kmet does not. He needs to just be on your bench. Cleveland Browns. Okay, so Baker Mayfield dislocated, or maybe subluxated, partial dislocation of his left elbow, or excuse me, left shoulder last week, not his throwing shoulder. I think that he's a high-end quarterback 2 this week, but here's the one little thing. In practice, we saw him going for handoffs, not securing the ball. He was using just his right hand to hand the ball off. I don't think it's going to lead to a fumble, but we have to assess all ends of variance here. And like, if Baker Mayfield fumbles on a handoff, I won't be surprised. That said, I'm still putting him in the mid to high quarterback 2 range, and would definitely start him into QB leagues, but just, understand that that's possible. One nice thing is, not nice thing, but helpful for Baker Mayfield's outlook is that stud defensive lineman Akeem Hicks registered back-to-back DNPs, did not participate in practice this week on Wednesday and Thursday due to an illness and a knee injury. Odell Beckham Jr. is set to make his return. I don't think he's going to play a full complement of snaps, but I do think that he's going to take over the role that Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz were rotating in place of Beckham. You could start Beckham in this one. I think it's a little bit risky, but he did get to take some contact in practice, and that's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see him not have to take contact for the first time in live action. So if you want to fire up Odell Beckham Jr., as a flex play, you could do that. He wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 at worst. What to do with Higgins, Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Anthony Schwartz? I've got this all in the piece here, but what we saw last week after slot receiver Jarvis Landry exited the game with an MCL sprain, Higgins came off the bench. He barely played. I think actually might not have played at all in week 1. He assumed the starting slot receiver role, played a team high 10 snaps there. Donovan Peoples-Jones in week 1 saw 7 slot snaps, and in week 2 saw 8. I think that he'll continue to spell Rashard Higgins there, but I think that Higgins is going to be the starting slot receiver. Baker likes a slot receiver. In a deep full point PPR league, you could start Rashard Higgins. Understand they might not go to him, but I like what I see here. And I know I broke this down in the intro, so I'll end it here, but Higgins could be a guy in full point PPR leagues, and especially in like DraftKings DFS. DPJ has not answered the bell. Anthony Schwartz is I hate this. He is the better dynasty prospect at this point. I'm probably not starting either of those two guys though. David Njoku, Austin Hooper, Harrison Bryant. Throw the dart at one of them in that order would be my recommendation in DFS. Jarvis Landry's absence will leave a vacuum in the safety blanket job. All of these guys got time in the slot. Running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, as I broke down earlier in the show. Nick Chubb seeing more routes run than Kareem Hunt. Dude, similar to what we talked about with Derrick Henry, might have access to an even higher RB1 ceiling than we thought. Kareem Hunt locked in running back 2. Demetric Felton should be rostered in dynasty formats. Baltimore Ravens at Detroit Lions. Okay, so Lamar Jackson, this is kind of cool. We did call this with all of the injuries. I expected a 3 to 4 carry increase on his 11.5 average carries per game. He's averaging 14 carries right now, with the state of the team. So, hey, nailed that one. Go me. He is a high flying quarterback 1. Marquis Brown really didn't practice last week. I don't think he practiced at all, but he still showed up and balled out on Monday night. Now that extra day of practice might have helped him. I believe he got in I will check this as we're doing the show, but he did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. And checking his status from Friday's practice right now, Marquis Brown limited. Okay, so he went limited, DNP limited. So I would roll with Marquis Brown as like a high flying wide receiver 3 against a real bad Detroit Lions secondary. Keep in mind they lost tragically Jeff Okudah due to a ruptured Achilles. So Marquis Brown's going to be running free. Actually, I correct myself. I have him in the rundown as a wide receiver 2. I mean, he got some pretty sick usage on Monday night. Sammy Watkins only on the wide receiver 3 radar if Marquise Brown is out. Otherwise, wide receiver 4. The Ravens are deploying Mark Andrews at the highest rate of his career. His 112 snaps are 5th highest at the position. He's always been a rotational guy outside of this season, so we like that a lot. He's an elite tight end 1. Tyson Williams is the new J.K. Dobbins. Latavius Murray is the new Gus Edwards. No, neither one is as good as the other two, but they are getting the work. Williams outsnapped Murray 37-27 last week, outtouched him 15-9. I like them both this week. Williams is a running back 2 on a weekly basis. Latavius Murray is a safe running back 3. Murray got a little more work in the red zone, so that kind of balances out the snap count there. Devontae Freeman just running cardio. Detroit Lions, the passing game formula is working for Jared Goff to retain, like, honestly, plus or minus maybe 3 spots. He's on the fringe, quarterback 1, quarterback 2, borderline. It's crazy, but he is. The Ravens defense is real banged up. They're down 2 corners. Goff could get it done for you if you need a quarterback this week. Quintez Cephas, so this really is, it's tragic as well. Number 1 wide receiver, Tyrell Williams suffered a concussion, I think in practice after week 1 or in week 1. Quintez Cephas has answered the friggin' bell. Dude is balling out. He's not very fast, but straight line speed, not great. Short area speed and hops out of the building. The dude is a wide receiver 2 this week. Like, I mean, he's going to be playing against either a banged up Marlon Humphrey or a sapped of his athleticism, Jimmy Smith, I would start Quintez Cephas this week. I know that that's wild, but I totally would. The Ravens are allowing 38.4 half-point PPR points per game, 8th most in the NFL. Khalif Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're not touching either one of those two guys. TJ Hawkinson, dude is a top 3 tight end. He's up there with Waller and Kelsey. He has 20 targets this season, comfortably leading the team. DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, both of these guys are outstanding. The Baltimore Ravens are allowing 6 receptions to running backs per game, tied for 10th most in the NFL. Both of these guys are high-flying running back 2s. New Orleans Saints at New England Patriots. Simple answer here with the Saints is avoid. I might even drop Alvin Kamara to a running back 2. I know that is wild, but what Bill Belichick does is when he plays a team that has a weak quarterback or a questionable quarterback, he finds the number 1 offensive player, one who's going to be a ball carrier, and he shuts him down. That's what he did to Corey Davis last week. Davis had 7 targets, 2 catches, and 8 yards, I think. They're going to do that to Kamara. They're going to try to bottle him up. He's going to get the work, but I mean, when you have a whole defense focusing on you, it's going to be tough to produce. Winston, Callaway, Troutman, Juwan Johnson, none of these guys can be in your starting lineup. I broke down the usage of the tight ends in the piece, but short answer, Troutman, his usage is bad, and Juwan Johnson is small usage, but he's getting looks when he's on the field. It's tough. New England Patriots, Mac Jones, low-end quarterback 2, because they're not going to really need him. You could roll with Jacoby Myers as a full-point PPR wide receiver 4, but I'm not starting Nelson Aguilar. The tight ends, you're stashing them and in case one of them misses some time. Damien Harris, 42 touches, 181 yards from scrimmage. Both are team leading. James White, 21 touches, 126 yards from scrimmage, second on the team. These are the 2 guys that you're starting from the New England Patriots. Damien Harris is a high-end running back 2. I think I've got, running back 15. James White is a very high floor flex play across all formats. You could start him as a running back 2 in full-point PPR leagues. Injury notes on the Saints: Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata are absent, along with Quan Alexander. Big day in line for the running backs. Ramondre Stevenson, just a primary running back behind Damien Harris. Arizona Cardinals at Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville's defense is as bad as you could possibly imagine. They have no interceptions and have only 5 passes defended. Kyler Murray will compete for overall quarterback 1 honors this week. Jadre Hopkins did not practice at all with a rib injury, but he is one of the few people who does not need to practice to play. I mean that. I have a quote from a doctor in there. He's a wide receiver 6 in half-point PPR. I think he can finish there again this week. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, AJ Green. If there's one thing I want you to remember from this, it's this. And this is from the fantastic work of Dwayne McFarland. Go listen to this week's episode of the Fantasy Football Hustle. Rondale Moore is leading the Arizona Cardinals in targets per route run at a rate of 36%. DeAndre Hopkins, number 2 on the team at 20%. Now, Rondale Moore, I get that he's not playing a full complement of snaps yet, but let's look at the raw numbers. He's the most targeted player on the Arizona Cardinals team. I know he's a rookie. I know that he's kind of small. He's thick Tavon, as Josh Norris likes to say. Get Rondale Moore on your roster if he's not on your roster. I understand game scripts could get a little bit wonky. Maybe they rest him. I don't know. But this guy, I personally feel very comfortable starting Rondale Moore as a wide receiver 3/flex play. Christian Kirk has been absolutely balling. I think that he is also a wide receiver 3. 8 of 9 targets for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. I like him a lot. AJ Green, gulp. Nope. I know that he's getting it done a little bit on the in the raw stats range, but his 41.7% catch rate is second worst on the team. The only person worst is their number 3 tight end, Demetrius Harris. Max Williams, he caught 1 long yarder off I think it was a tip drill play. It's the best game of his career. Don't expect him. Don't chase variance. Running backs, Chase Edmonds and James Conner. Edmonds is playing very well. 5.5 yards per carry, catching 9 of 9 balls for 72 yards. They continue to run James Conner out there, 58 snaps to Edmonds 79. I don't want anything to do with Conner though. He's just not doing. He's not playing well, and it's really, really sad. Chase Edmonds, borderline running back 2/running back 3. Jacksonville Jaguars. Urban Meyer is a terrible coach, and his media appearances this week have not made anybody feel good. Arizona is blitzing the hell out of opponents, 32 blitzes, second most in the NFL. I'm downgrading Trevor Lawrence. I know I had him as a top 12 play in week 1, but he's a mid-tier quarterback 2 at best this week. Marvin Jones is the only safe wide receiver here. DJ Chark saw 12 targets in week 1 before getting 4, I believe. Yeah, 4 last week, because he only caught 3 in week 1. And I know he got, one of them was a long touchdown. Anyway, Laviska Shenault then became the first player in NFL history to see 5 or more targets and record not even 0 yards, but negative yards. And he suffered a shoulder injury. The way that Meyer seems to punish players for bad performances is what they did to Chark last week. We don't know what is going to happen with Chark and Laviska. I think both of these players are very good, and they will flourish without Urban Meyer there. They're wide receiver 4/5s for me this week. Marvin Jones, locked in wide receiver 2. Dude is an absolute monster. No tight end of note here. James O'Shaughnessy got injured. Real sad. He was probably not going to be a guy to target anyway, though. James Robinson, Carlos Hyde. Robinson is a running back 3/4. Carlos Hyde is getting far too much. I mean, Robinson put some distance in the snap column, but like Hyde is still there. He's getting passing game work. It's ugly. Washington football team at Buffalo Bills. Taylor Heineke, dude played really well. Don't care what you think of him. No, they shouldn't go sign Cam. He's a liability for a number of reasons. Taylor Heineke, 7.9% completion percentage over expectation. It was 5th best in the NFL last year against the Buffalo Bills. Oh, excuse me, not against the Buffalo Bills, against the New York Giants. That'll probably drop a little bit this week against Buffalo, but I mean, he's making tough throws. So applaud him for that. His rushing floor, which I don't think he really accessed, keeps him in the mid to high quarterback 2 range. Terry McLaurin he got 14 targets this last week on against the Giants. I like Terry McLaurin as a wide receiver 1 again this week. He's going to have to fight Tre'Davious White, but 14 targets. I mean, it's clear that Heineke knows where his bread is buttered. If he's going to do that again, stick with Terry. Adam Humphries and Damian Brown. Damian Brown is only in DFS. Humphries, I think, was second on the team in targets, but he had a 2.0 target air yards, average target area yards mark, only a full point PPR, like crazy deep league guy. Logan Thomas, mid to low tight end 1. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick. Again, this one, McFarland is just friggin' killing it. Gibson is the lead back, and he's getting some passing game work while on the field. But J.D. McKissick owns, in the parlance of Mr. McFarland, the 2-minute drill and long down and distance work. He's not going away. McKissick is a top 15 running back this week. And J.D. McKissick he's a high floor, especially in full point PPR. He's RB4/flex play, and like he can be an RB3 in full point PPR. Buffalo Bills. Okay, so mobile quarterbacks have actually done pretty well against the Washington defensive line. I guess they're flushing them out of the pocket and making them make plays. So WFT, I'm not actually going to go into it. It's all in the piece, but their line, they're getting pressure, but it flushes the guys out. And both Herbert and Daniel Jones have finished as top 5 fantasy quarterbacks against them. So Josh Allen, I think he can get right here. Is elite quarterback 1. Stephon Diggs, you know who he is. He's an elite quarterback 1. Wide receiver 1. He could probably play quarterback. Cole Beasley, wide receivers 3/flex play. Keenan Allen and Sterling Shepard, primary slot receivers for their respective teams, have finished like around, I think, wide receiver 30. So I think Beasley, who's going to get a similar target total to them, is a fine bet for that wide receiver 3 range. Sanders, he beat out Davis. I lost, but he's old, and we'll see what happens. He's a flex play, multi-flex play probably. And Gabe Davis is a wide receiver 4, boom bust type though. Devin Singletary, dude is the lead back here. Moss made the most of his 8 carries. I think it was like 26 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Singletary ran the ball at 6.3 yards per carry last week. He's not going to surrender lead back duties running like that. So I like him as a high end flex. Moss, RB4 maybe. New York Jets at Denver Broncos. Okay, so there are some key Denver defense injuries. It's still a really well-coached defense, and they're going to give Zach Wilson fits. But Bradley Chubb, Von Miller on injured reserve, along with cornerback Ronald Darby. Wilson is a mid to low quarterback too. Corey Davis is going to get peppered with targets, no problem though. So I am keeping him as like at worst a top 20 wide receiver this week. The Broncos are not going to be able to do what Bill Belichick did, but Vic Fangio is very good. So I get it if you're nervous. But two guys who have very similar. Let's see here. Is it ADOT? I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, ADOT of Corey Davis are Marvin Jones and Sterling Shepard. Both finished inside the top 20 wide receivers against the Broncos. So I think Davis can work that same area of the field and do a good job. Braxton Berrios, full point PPR, multi-flex, like wide receiver 4. Yeah, why not? James Crowder is out. Denzel Mims barely exists. And Keelan Cole is just running cardio. Elijah Moore, he's a boom bust, wide receiver 5. Ignore the tight ends. Tevin Coleman is out with an injury. It's Michael Carter, Ty Johnson season. Ty Johnson is a running back 3 or 4. He's going to get double-digit carries. It's a tough matchup, but, you know, I think in like a 2-flex league, you could start Ty Johnson. Michael Carter, he did very well through the air. He's caught 2 of 3 passes for 29 yards. Kid's doing well. Getting more audio issues, you guys, but hopefully it's all right for you. Anyway, yeah, I like both of these guys as like high-end flex plays. Denver Broncos, passing game. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we talked about this in the intro. I'm not going to hit it too much, but Teddy Bridgewater playing very well. Dude can actually finish as a quarterback 1 this week. Cortland Sutton, he's a top 15 wide receiver. The dude is just a target hog with Jerry Jeudy out, and I'm extremely excited to start him this week. Tim Patrick is operating at a really efficient rate. I think he's only let 1 ball go. Yeah, he's caught 7 of 8 for 72 yards, 2 touchdowns. KJ Hamler took over as the starting slot receiver job, but Patrick is the one who's been returning the value. So wide receiver 3/flex play for Patrick and Hamler is a boom bust wide receiver 4. Brief pause for a sip. Tight end Noah Fant. Dude actually got the work. He got the target usage, but his average targeted air yards just 4.1. Not going to be able to return solid tight end 1 value, so I'm not going to him this week. Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. Long story short here, Melvin Gordon increased the snap discrepancy between the two of them, and he's really dominating the passing game work, and he's running okay. That said, Javonte Williams, 7th highest PFF rushing grade across the NFL, 73.5, 75.3, that is, minimum of 15 attempts. I like him as I think Melvin Gordon, I have him as the running back 23, Javonte Williams, running back 25. Miami Dolphins at Las Vegas Raiders. Basically avoid the Dolphins. Jacoby Brissett is going to be starting in Tua Tagovailoa's stead with the rib injury. Jalen Waddle took Mike Gesicki's job. I think that don't start Brissett. In his 15 games as a starter in 2019, he had a negative 4% completion percent above expectation. And the Raiders have the best defensive end in football right now, Max Crosby. It's going to be brutal for Brissett. Waddle and Will Fuller, who is going to assume X receiver duties over Devontae Parker, that is my prediction, are on the wide receiver 3/flex play spectrum. Maybe you got to drop him more towards the wide receiver 4, though. Devontae Parker, wide receiver 4/5. Gesicki lost his job to Waddle. He is a slot receiver. When it comes to the running backs, Salvon Ahmed and Myles Gaskin, 3 backs are still getting some work, if I recall correctly. I know Ahmed was getting some ground game usage, and I'm just double checking Malcolm Brown's usage as I'm saying this. But here's the problem with Jacoby Brissett at the helm for Myles Gaskin. He's a scrambler. He's not going to be dumping off to Myles Gaskin. So yeah, that's correct. Malcolm Brown got 9 snaps last week. Brissett's not going to be dumping it off to Gaskin. Both of these guys are low ceiling RB4s. They could try to control the clock with Salvon Ahmed. That's the guy if I have to pick one. Raiders. Carr is leading the NFL with 817 friggin' yards. It's awesome. It's surprising, but that's 128 yards over the number 2 passer, Kyler Murray. Now, Miami's secondary is fantastic. Their pass rush is all right. They have fantastic named edge rushers, Samuel Eguavoen and Andrew Van Ginkel, who's If he's a detective part-time, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm locking Carr in as a back-end quarterback one, even in a tough matchup. Henry Ruggs, he's starting to show out. 19.66% of the team's air yards, second on the team behind Darren Waller. Miami's DB group is tough. So I am keeping Ruggs as a wide receiver 3 / like multi-flex guy, but the dude is starting to separate from Bryan Edwards. I'm not starting Bryan Edwards, and maybe I'm probably not even stashing him on the bench. Hunter Renfrow continues to get really low ADOT looks, but high volume. I think he's the second highest targeted guy on the team. He's there in a full point PPR format somewhere. Darren Waller, 26 targets, leads the NFL, not at the tight end position, the whole NFL. He will do battle with Travis Kelce and TJ Hawkinson for tight end 1 honors on a weekly basis. Josh Jacobs, I believe he was downgraded to doubtful, not outful, but he is probably going to be outful. I like that a lot for Peyton Barber and Kenyon Drake. Miami's run defense is non-existent. They're allowing 25.2 half-point PPR points per game, 2 opposing backfields, 6th most in the NFL. Barber and Drake are both flex plays. The metadata is in there, is in the piece on how this is spread up between the rushing and the receiving game, but basically running backs in both uses are dominating this front 7. Seattle Seahawks at Minnesota Vikings. Quarterback Russell Wilson, their pace is not up, but he's just scoring too effectively. He's a quarterback 7 through 2 weeks. He's going to stay there. The Minnesota Vikings are sorely going to be missing pass rusher Anthony Barr. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, lock him into your wide receiver 1 spots, throw away the key. The pass rush of the Minnesota Vikings has had mixed results. And again, Barr is out. 588 passing yards, 5 touchdowns allowed by the Vikings secondary. So Metcalf and Lockett, they're both going to chow. Freddie Swain, DFS consideration. Gerald Everett, Will Dissly, shared time in week 1 before week 2, where Will Dissly, who ran more routes than Everett did in week 1, didn't run a single route in week 2. Bye, Gerald Everett right now. I know that he only got 2 targets last week. This is the kind of, he ran 28 routes. The usage is going to be there. Everett can still be a tight end 1. Chris Carson saw no passing game work last week. That's a huge bummer. Travis Homer got it all. He's not getting enough work to be a standalone value, though. Alex Collins is the primary rush backup back. True Chris Carson does not have standalone value. Chris Carson sitting right on the RB1/2 borderline. Again, Vikings defense kind of middling. Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins. He's in a glass case of emotion, but he's playing very well. Back in quarterback 1 through 2 weeks. I think he's going to stay there against Seattle. Seattle's defense is deep, not good. They can keep some pass rushers going after him, but I think that Kirk Cousins can still totally return top 12 value. Wide receivers, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, 50 routes apiece. Thielen, so here's that. Thielen's just been a little bit more efficient in converting his red zone and end zone looks. He's got 3 touchdowns. Jefferson's got 1. I like Adam Thielen as a wide receiver 1 this week. Jefferson, wide receiver, high end wide receiver 2 at worst, but yeah, you can start him as a wide receiver 1, no problem. Biggest guy to benefit from Irv Smith Jr.'s absence is number 3 slot receiver, KJ Osborne. 17 targets on the year, only 2 behind Justin Jefferson, 86 snaps ahead of the number 4 receiver on the team. He is locked in 3 wide sets. Now they do run a lot of 2 tight ends, but the slot coverage of the Seattle Seahawks, specifically Marquis Brown, not that great. So don't be surprised if KJ Osborne stays hot as a wide receiver 3/flex play this week. Dalvin Cook did not practice due to an ankle injury. Like DeAndre Hopkins, he's a guy who can play on 0 practice, but Alexander Mattison needs to be rostered in all formats. And again, if you didn't have Cook and you drafted Mattison, good job. You may now have a top 12 running back on your hands. If Cook is active, he's a top 3 running back in the NFL. If he is not, Madison is probably top 10. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Los Angeles Rams. Biggest story here is the absence of Antonio Brown, but Tom Brady, he's an elite quarterback 1 every single week. This team is so unbelievably talented. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both guys with Antonio Brown out are likely to see double-digit targets. Brown tested positive for COVID-19, and the fact that he didn't turn around very quickly likely means he's experienced it because he's vaccinated. The fact that he did not just come back to play after 48 hours, most players are able to produce 2 negative tests very quickly when they're vaccinated. It probably means that he's experiencing symptoms. Don't know when he's coming back. So Evans, Godwin, 10 plus targets apiece. What happened last time they played the Rams last year? Thanks to PFF and their wonderful wide receiver / cornerback matchups column, Mike Evans caught 5 balls for 49 yards and a touchdown. I still would be ranking Mike Evans as a wide receiver 1, but if you want to take that into account, the fact that Jalen Ramsey is likely to shadow cover him, which he did last time, I still think he can hit that kind of usage. 5 catches, 50 yards, 49. I know he's never allowed 50 receiving yards or whatever. I think that Mike Evans can still finish at like no worse than wide receiver 24 this week. And Chris Godwin could see 15 targets and, he's the wolf that eats the moon or what have you. He like a top 5 finish is within his range of outcomes. Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson are the 2 guys who are going to be vying to take over for Antonio Brown. Scotty Miller is more proven. Tyler Johnson, I think, has seen a little bit more usage this year, just a little bit. Monitor the news to figure out which one of these guys is going to be the starter, and start one as a wide receiver 3/4 or flex play if you are in need. Both of these guys can play. They would be starters absolutely on a different team. Gronk, top 5 tight end. Dude's a beast still. Leonard Fournette, 29 total touches on the year, more than double that of Ronald Jones and Gio Bernard. Gio Bernard, you can cut him. He's not going to be a factor. Ronald Jones, I think his pass protection was recently criticized by Bruce Arians. I don't like Fournette in this one. But the Rams, they do allow running backs to run on them. They're happy to have opponents run, and while they pass a bunch. So you could start him as like a running back 4/3 flex play. I'm not telling you to though. Los Angeles Rams. Big thing for Matthew Stafford this week is, well, there's a couple things. Jason Pierre-Paul, he's out or likely to be out. I think he is. Don't recall the injury or the issue. Recalling if I'm trying to recall, hand and shoulder. That's right. I knew it was 2 things. So yeah, he's out this week. So that's huge. Now, of course, they're extremely deep. Joe Tryon can just start this week and they'll be fine. But JPP, he is still a really big impact player. That said, Matthew Stafford has only developed rapport really with slot receiver Cooper Kupp. He still can develop rapport with Robert Woods. He can still develop rapport with Tyler Higbee. So I am keeping Matthew Stafford firmly as a back-end quarterback 1. That's where he's QB 11 right now. Cooper Kupp is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, and you should continue to start him as such. Since the loss, this is from the rundown this week, since the loss of stud cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting, the Bucs slot coverage has yielded 10 receptions on 13 targets for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns per Pro Football Focus. Cooper Kupp, gonna eat. If this was in Maryland, we'd be talking about crab cakes and football. Robert Woods, I think you can still rank him as a wide receiver 2. I know he hasn't blown up for you guys, but he's really, really good. And he's really, really good. Van Jefferson is the clear-cut number 3 receiver. He's operating in the downfield role, which is kind of funny because he's not that athletic, but Sean Jackson only has 17 snaps this season. Van Jefferson is up to 90. If you need a wide receiver 4/flex, Van Jefferson is your guy. This is not the best week to start him against the Bucs, though. Tight end Tyler Higbee. Buy low moment for him. Tight end number 2, Johnny Munt. His snaps plummeted from week 1 to week 2. Higbee is the guy here. Tough matchup though. So, maybe buy low after this week. Okay. As for the running backs, Darrell Henderson did not practice all week. It's a pain tolerance issue with his rib injury. What do I think is going to happen here? Sony Michel is the most bankable guy. I think that he can be a flex play at worst. That's where I'm ranking him. I think Darrell Henderson could play, but he might only be like 8 to 10 touches. Jake Funk will spell him. Henderson, you could start him as like a multi-flex play, but this is the Bucs front 7. It's really good. So Michel is the guy that I want to start as a flex out of this group. If Henderson is out, Sony Michel would elevate to like running back 25, maybe, but again, it's the Bucs, so that's tough. Jake Funk becomes like a running back 5. if Darrell Henderson is out. Sunday Night Football, Green Bay Packers at San Francisco 49ers. Aaron Rodgers bounced the hell back last week, and it's all systems go once again. Defensive lineman Eric Armstead got in I think a limited practice once this week, was DNP outside of that with an adductor issue. Kevin Givens, defensive tackle, is out. Javon Kinlaw practicing in a limited fashion with a knee injury, and linebacker Emmanuel Mosley is practicing in a limited fashion with a knee injury, still may not play. Rodgers, mid-tier quarterback 1, Devontae Adams, elite wide receiver 1. Marcus Valdes-Scantling is someone who I will never, ever, even if there's a fire, tell you to start. I think he's the most volatile. We might get to one who's more volatile, but I think he's on a week-to-week, year-to-year basis, most volatile starting wide receiver in the NFL. Allen Lazard, Amari Rodgers, Randall Cobb. Matt LaFleur recently called for Randall Cobb to get more usage. Okay, so the old man Cobb is going to get more of Amari Rodgers snaps, and Allen Lazard is running as the wide receiver 3 in this offense. I'm not interested in any of these guys. You could go, there is some distant format that you could start Lazard or even Cobb, but I am not suggesting you do so. Robert Tonyan, back end tight end 1. Whew. Oh boy, Oberto. Okay, San Francisco 49ers allowing 27 half-point PPR points per game, 4th most in the NFL. Aaron Jones, my running back for this week. Dude is going to eat. A.J. Dillon, primary rush back, should Aaron Jones miss time. Kylan Hill, primary passing game back, should Aaron Jones miss time. Neither one seeing enough work to have standalone value. The Green Bay defense I have in the piece here is uniquely bad. I listed all of the ways in which their defense is uniquely bad. A lot of it has to do with Zadarius Smith being on injured reserve, but like they are fewest in the NFL and or second fewest in the NFL in a number of passing game categories. Jimmy Garoppolo, high-end quarterback 2 this week, can finish top 12 in the position, and further Kyle Shanahan's poor decision of not starting Trey Lance. Deebo Samuel has 20 targets. That's more than double than the next closest 49er. He's a wide receiver 1, 53.58% of the team's air yards, most in the NFL through 2 weeks. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 1, book it. Trent Sherfield and Brandon Ayuk. Green Bay has been burned for 40-plus yard touchdowns in back-to-back games. Small sample size, but hey, that's what we work with in football. So Trent Sherfield, DFS play, or wide receiver 5 boom bust guy. Brandon Ayuk, given the fact that he's in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, he is perhaps more volatile than Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He should see like 8 targets in this one. Is very, very scary to start him, and I'm not suggesting that you do so, but the proper evaluation in a normal world would be that he is like wide receiver 20 in the rankings. Tight end George Kittle, 122 snaps, 4th highest across the tight end position in the NFL. He has 9 targets, 2nd highest on the team. He's not in the Kelsey, Waller, Hawkinson, Andrews tier, but he and Kyle Pitts are together in one right after it. I would keep him in as a tight end 1 in your starting lineup. What's going on with the running backs? Elijah Mitchell, doubtful to play with a shoulder injury. JaMychal Hasty ruled out already with an ankle injury. They have Trey Sermon, who just cleared the concussion protocol, Trenton Cannon, and Jacques Patrick. What I think will happen is that Trey Sermon is going to get like 20 touches. I understand how risky that is, but Green Bay has allowed 279 rushing yards to opponents through 2 games, 5th most in the NFL. Somebody's going to eat. Trenton Cannon is a capable dual threat rotational guy, very athletic. Jacques Patrick is an enormous unathletic man. I will be very surprised if Jacques Patrick sees meaningful work. He could poach a goal line touchdown. I hope that that's not the case. I would start. I've got Trey Sermon on the running back 2/3 borderline, and Trenton Cannon as like maybe an 8-touch rotational guy, multi-flex RB 4 or 5. Don't go anywhere near Patrick. He really should not be a contributor this week. Okay. That's it for for nerding out with Nic Bodiford. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry about the sound. I'm sure I was squinting that whole time. But thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. I love you all. Until next week.